Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Jamie and today I'm introducing you to New South Wales' best looking diesel locomotive. Welcome the 421 class to the roster. So off the bat, you're thinking to yourself that looks like an F9. And guess what? You're right. What this is an improved F9 export model. So based on a 42 class made in 1955 to 56, which is derived from the F9, well, the 421 is simply a better version of the 42 class of New South Wales. So the 421 class of New South Wales was built in 1965 to 1966. The 421s were built as a dual-ended locomotive with a bulldog nose on the front and a blunt nose off the rear. At first, they were meant to serve the main South Line in New South Wales before being sent to work on premier Western services such as the Indian Pacific service. Later on in 1982, they went on to serve services such to Melbourne, Victoria. In 1986, all 10 were retired from service and were later bought out by other companies such as Northern Rivers Rail for excursion services. Out of the original 10, 4 are preserved and run frequently on East Coast heritage trains, while 1 is stored and the other is scrapped. For such a small batch of locomotives, they made a large impression in New South Wales history. So coming up next is me showing off the functions on my 42105. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of this video. So, I hope you enjoyed your little history lesson there. Now, we're going to talk a bit more about the model we have here. So, I think there's a few things that, even though the history sort of discussed it, I think there's a few nice things that we can sort of talk about. So, one of the most, I think, makes this quite unique compared to, let's say, other F9s or whatever. Because all it is, it's a larger and extended, improved F9. So, one of the things that does make it quite unique from the bat is actually the buffers on the front. So, with the buffers, New South Wales never really retired the buffer and chain until a little bit later than expected. So, a lot of trains and locomotives were still fitted with buffers and chains, even though a majority of them, even by 1960s, were fitted with knuckle couplers. So the, knuckle couplers, So one interesting thing that makes this happen is that a lot of the early 60s diesels were designed with buffers, but later on were removed. However, all of the 421 classes never got them removed. Now, one other interesting thing that you may wonder, even with the large distances that New South Wales is, I believe it's the size of one of the largest states like Pennsylvania. We never included a Mars light into any of our locomotives. It's not that we couldn't do it, it just never, I guess, was ever included. Now, so what we have here, just to talk about the front, is we have the headlight, marker lights, and the class lights. Now, one interesting thing is, in New South Wales, even to this day, we do use marker lights. It's legally required. So, on the model that we have here, we do also have that featured. So, in terms of your DCC functions, because this is a DCC fitted model, aftermarket though, what we have here is a functioning headlight, white, red, and off for the marker lights, and your class lights will be also illuminated. Now, why is this important? Because in New South Wales, that's the rule. So if you are modeling New South Wales, or just want to have a bit of fun with adding something a little bit different, but kind of cool, that will still feel American-esque, I think this is one of your models. Unfortunately, there has been a little bit of damage to the ladder. I'm going to try and fix that. So let's look on the side. Now, what I'll do is also have a F3. Now, obviously, it's a nice F3, but you can sort of see the resemblance in shape, even from the front, even in the sides. Now, I'm going to remove this. So, it's good to sort of portholes as what you'd expect on a later E9 model. And I'm not too sure about the F9s. I don't have a model of them. I haven't really had a chance to collect any. But, as what you can see here, we have the start of a second cab. Now, we would call this the blunt end. You can kind of guess why it's called the blunt end, because it's flat, it's blunt, compared to this sharper end on the other side. Now, why do New South Wales locomotives, or actually most locomotives in Australia, have dual cabs? So, one important thing to realize is, in Australia, there's no real large trains to the same degree as in America. Well, yes, there is massive trains, don't get me wrong here. It was always seen for passenger trains to only require 1 or 2 locomotives. And this was the same for, let's say, even a 12-car passenger train. Even though the carriages were basically derived by designs or, improved common designs, they were generally pulled usually by 1 or 2 locomotives. So the need for dual ends is actually quite important, especially when you're talking about the smaller trains. So what they would normally do, and this was the logic, which was you would bring a train into Central Station, New South Wales, and as you bring it in, there is a set of turnout just before the locomotive. So what you'd do is you'd bring it forward and disconnect the train there. The brakes come on, and then through the points you'd reverse and connect to the train on the other end. Now, what this is really useful is you now don't need an extra engine. You can basically connect it and drive from this end. Now, one other thing is I'm not sure if you have also figured it out. The engineer would sit on this side, not this side. So this is where the fireman would sit, and that's where the engineer would sit, or as in New South Wales, we'd call them the fireman and the driver. Now, we would also have a bit of a cowcatcher and also a set of buffers as well. Now, we also do have the class lights, headlights, and marker lights here. And on the other end, we also have a beautiful 42105 and the L7 logo. Now, in general, I think this is a fantastic model. The problem is, good luck getting one. Now, as if you are enthusiastic about getting one of these models, and the reason why I have decided to actually get one is because I think they look amazing, and I don't think anyone in the comments could ever disagree. This doesn't look like an amazing EMD locomotive. One of the major issues is it's extremely hard to get in Australia, because they've been bought out since I think 2015. They are extremely hard to find. Now, second-hand wise, they do come about here and there, but I believe while they are quite unique, you are able to find one for maybe around 500 Australian or around 300 US. Now, is it worth it? In terms of actual quality and actual features, it is definitely a step above even a Thurn in a lot of ways. Actually, in terms of DCC functions, it's just amazingly well done. And this goes across the board for all of my Auscision, and it's kind of why I have perhaps a little bit more critical about a Thurn in videos. Recently I spent, I think, $465 on a Conrail SDP. I think I've shown it to you in a few of the shorts there. But what is quite disappointing in a way is with my F45, the class lights don't illuminate, or on my SDP 45, some features just feel a little bit half done, and perhaps that's me being very critical. But coming in from the Australian modeler, where you have things like the class sites, everything is separate by function and all that. It is a little bit disappointing that a third head doesn't really even match that. And don't forget, this is not a brand new model. This is at least close to 10 years old. So it's a little bit disappointing that a third is still only coming to sort of figure that stuff out. Now, with Rapido is Rapido, they already have all that. I mean, my complaint is how expensive they are. But, retail-wise, Auscision usually costs around 465 Australia, and that's with DCC sound. So, it does feel a little bit, comparatively a bit less feature-less on some of the more American models, such as a brand new Athern Genesis or something like that. It is a little bit disappointing. But saying that, I think you should get one if you get an opportunity. It depends. You are gonna have majorly about 3 different choices. You're gonna have basically. Now I'm gonna compare it because you're gonna have Tuscan, which is basically that color. You're gonna think Pennsylvania Tuscan. And then you have State Rail Authority. Then you technically do have PTC, which is more yellow than brown, technically. Depends on which one you want. But they do have several different ones. Now, I just wanted to showcase one of my favorite Australian locomotives because I think it's very cool. It pulled Australia's, premier train. But overall, it's quite just a nice sort of look back at what technically is EMD's best work, I would say, in some ways. But yeah, overall, I think it's a nice buy, and if you ever get a chance, definitely pick one up. Especially just because of how unique, but how nice it would fit onto a, especially if you get a New South Wales one, you could fit that into a Pennsylvania layer, and in a lot of ways it would actually quite nicely fit. So there you go. There is my conclusions to the 421 class of New South Wales. I think honestly it's a good model. I have no complaints. Actually, the problem with this model is it makes a lot of the other stuff not look kind of bad in some ways. I have no complaints about Auscision. My general complaints is please be a bit better with pre-orders. But overall, I've never had a bad day with Auscision. And if you ever do consider to pick up an Auscision product in the future, I'd definitely recommend it. It's Australian Railways is quite unique in the sense of what it is basically British and American sort of combined in a wacky way. We've got our own derived built Dash 8s, Dash 9s, Gevos even now, and that what I would say is quite a unique sort of take on the American design, where instead of having the safety cabs, we've basically got like more of a flat cab. One other massive feature is also the buffers. That's also quite unique. But yeah, have a think. I enjoyed sort of sharing with you one of my favorite locomotives, and hopefully in the future I might show you one of the improved 421, the 422 in Bicentennial. Now that is a good looking livery, and it's probably the finest in all of my collection, to be honest. But overall, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.